And good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Andrew here. Our hurricane, which continues to strengthen. Pressure now down to 974 millibars. The Air Force plane is out there, and that's what the pressure reading that they extrapolated down to the surface has come in to be. And think about that. The 5 a.m. advisory was 994 millibars, and now we're down to 974. So that's a 20 millibar drop in quite a short period of time, and that does indicate right there, just from pressure alone, that we have a rapid intensifying cyclone here. Winds at 75 miles an hour. This is the 5 a.m. advisory again, 25.8, 67.5 west, 625 miles to the east of Nassau, or about 800 miles to the east, southeast of Miami right now. Again, it appears from the satellite indication that we do have a strengthening hurricane, and the new advisory should be in about 10 minutes or so. So we'll get that to you as soon as we get it in. All right, here's the infrared satellite picture. And what we've done is color the tops. And the reason we've done that is because we can show you the deep convection indicated by here, the yellow and the red. Now watch what happens as we go on in time. The yellow and the red wrap all the way around the center of circulation, and when those thunderstorms just keep developing and keep developing around the center like that, that's also another indication of a strengthening storm. And look what's happened in the past couple of hours here. A very, very definitive eye, even with the infrared satellite picture here. And this is something that you really have to pay attention to, because we've got a strengthening hurricane. The forecast track takes it toward the Florida coastline within 72 to 80 hours. And that's about 2-3 days away here as we look at it. And, you know, granted, that is a long time away. It's something to watch, especially as we get up here to 75, perhaps even 100 mile an hour winds. So obviously something to watch here in time. This is the visible satellite picture, and as the sun comes up, you can get a very, very nice look at the eye. You can also see how bright these white clouds are around the center. That's what you saw with the yellow and the red on the infrared. This is the deep convection, the deep thunderstorms, indicating to us that we do have a strengthening hurricane. And it actually, if you plot where the plane is and where they are flying in the center of the eye, the thing has actually jogged more west than north in the past couple of hours. Interesting, you betcha. 75 to 85 miles away from the center. That's where we find the tropical storm winds all the way around the center and through here. So this is something that we're going to continue to look at for you and watch as it makes its way toward the Bahamas and also Florida, perhaps. And we'll have to, again, it's something that we have to watch. It's still 2-3 days away, but something obviously that is developing and could become a very big concern to Florida. All right, we look at the entire Atlantic for you. Away
Atlantic side, and Andrew is turning into a very strong storm, intensifying rapidly. Winds have gone from 75 miles an hour earlier this morning to 90 miles an hour. We have the 11 o'clock update. This is the way things look at this time concerning Andrew. If you're plotting, 25.9 north, 69 degrees west. Let's put the satellite into motion, color the cloud tops for you. Of course, the colors of orange and red indicate the highest clouds, which you can see wrapping in a cyclonic fashion around the eye, which is right in there. In fact, the eye has become much more well-defined during the past couple of hours, indicating that Andrew continues to steadily intensify. Here's a visible satellite picture beginning early this morning, just as the sun was coming up. But watch as the sun gets higher in the sky, how it's reflecting off the very heavy cloud cover around the center of Andrew. Again, the eye showing up very well right there, the eye wall surrounding the center of the storm. Andrew should continue its westward movement. Again, there's high pressure up in here, and it's going to force Andrew in a westerly direction for probably at least the next 72 hours. Already hurricane watches have been issued for the northern part of the Bahama Island chain. And that means, of course, that hurricane conditions are possible.
Well, we have a hurricane off each coast. In the Pacific, this is Lester threatening the Baja Peninsula of California. Might bring some rain up into the U.S. The one we're most concerned about, though, is Hurricane Andrew off the east coast of the United States. And I'll show you the latest particulars on that based on the Hurricane Center advisory. At 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, center at 25.9, 69.7. That's just 655 miles now, due east of Miami, Florida, and it continues to move just about straight toward the west at 14 miles per hour. Top winds now up to 95 miles an hour, and the barometric pressure is 974 millibars, or 28.76 inches. We can show you this picture in motion and show you an extremely well-developed hurricane, and you can follow that eye yourself as it moves on toward the west. Again, it's moving west in the general direction now of Florida at 14 miles per hour. We have another type of picture, and in just a second we'll load the colors for you here and show you what's going on. Right there is the center of circulation, and When these colors get loaded, we'll show you the very bright clouds associated with the highest tops. And you can also get your perspective here. You can see it's not that far from Florida. There, the northern Bahamas, and there you see this very well-developed eye on the hurricane as it moves on toward the west. Now, we don't have any watches or warnings out for continental United States. We do have some hurricane watches out, though. For the Bahamas, here's the wind field first. This is the hurricane force winds around there, and here are the tropical storm force winds extending out a good ways as this hurricane makes its way toward the west. Here are the watches now that are in effect, and just for the Bahamas, for Luther and Andros on up. A couple hurricanes, so you have the one that we're most concerned about, that's Andrew off the east coast. Well, we have another one off the southwest coast of the United States, that's Lester, that is off Baja California, and that's expected to cross over Baja California. Let's start in though and show you the latest particulars on Andrew, and I have some new information here with a little bit different coordinates than you see there. West at just about 14 miles per hour. We can show you a different vantage point, a different satellite picture here, and in just a second these we'll colorize the tops and show you where they are. There's the center of circulation right there. There you can see it real well, and you can see it moving on to the west. It's getting pretty close now to some of the Bahamas, and there are hurricane watches out for the northern Bahamas, and we would anticipate that eventually here that a watch would be put out for some of that area.
What that means is that in the Bahamas, a hurricane is anticipated. A hurricane warning means that a hurricane is likely within 24 hours. And the reason they put the warning up now is at the rate that the hurricane is moving, we expect to see hurricane conditions over the northern Bahamas by late tomorrow night. In other words, on the order of 24 hours, maybe a few hours more than that. Okay, we have Dr. Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center now. Dr. Sheets, you with us?
Oh, he's going to turn it when she gets him? Okay.
Bob, can you hear me? All right, I'll tell you what, let's hold off just a second here, and I can hear Bob getting ready, but it's not quite ready. All right, so let's go over this one more time. A hurricane warning for the northern Bahamas, a hurricane watch from Titusville down to the dry Tortugas. Top winds with the storm at 100 miles an hour. Hurricane force winds extend out 30 miles an hour. And the tropical storm force winds, now you're going to hear a lot about tropical storm force winds because that means winds of about 39 miles per hour, and that's when a lot of things stop. Evacuation stop, Coast Guard help on the water stops, bridges stop, a lot of things stop, okay, at tropical storm force winds. Okay, now we have Dr. Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center. Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We put the hurricane watch up now for the Florida East Coast. At what point are you anticipating that somewhere along that coast we'll be experiencing at least tropical storm force winds?
Well, we're looking at putting up a warning probably sometime tomorrow morning with this movement that we have right now. The earliest that we would see tropical storm force winds along our coast would be sometime Monday morning.
All right, but possibly early Monday morning, right?
Well, it could be, and it depends on whether you got 13 knots of movement or 11 knots of movement. So 1 or 2 knots when you're looking 48 hours into the future makes quite a bit of difference in time. So we're looking at sometime in early morning, perhaps.
Okay, well, what I wanted to stress was that we need to get the preparations done tomorrow and not assume we have time on Monday to be doing things.
That's right. Assuming the storm continues to move on the speeds that we have now, that's the reason we had to move up the timing on this watch and warning process. Now, if it slows down to maybe 10 knots, then we'll have a little bit more time to prepare. But if not, then tomorrow is the time to take those actions.
Okay, you've been looking obviously at the models. You have the aircraft in the storm investigating it. Are we anticipating significant strengthening, minor strengthening? What's your call there?
It's a very small, tight storm. In fact, the eye has just popped out again. This is sort of a normal kind of cycle that you go up there, drop down about 970, 974 millibars, level it off, and now I suspect when the airplane gets in there again, which it will be in there momentarily, we're going to see deepening again. So we're recommending people prepare for a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. That means greater than 110 miles per hour.
Now, and you're also recommending to the emergency managers that Category 3 type evacuations take place?
That's correct.
All right, but that would not happen until tomorrow.
No, I think that it's time to wait there because if you get a slight change in direction, you may not have all of this area that's in the watch be affected.
All right, now the area, this high pressure area we've been talking about to the north, do any of the models indicate any potential weakening of that area that might deflect the system north?
No, I think that all models are in general agreement that it will be a basically westerly course. It might be slightly northwest, slightly south of west, and that's the reason for this watch all the way from Titusville through the Florida Keys.
Now, at how wide a distance, once we get the storm?
No, I think that all models are in general agreement that it will be a basically westerly course. It might be slightly northwest, slightly south of west, and that's the reason for this watch all the way from Titusville through the Florida Keys.
Now, at how wide a distance, once we get the storm closer to the coast and we get a good feeling of where it's coming in, obviously the closer it is, the better we know. When it gets there, we know, right? But how big a distance to the north and south are we talking about a significant storm surge situation?
Well, the storm surge itself will be concentrated over a distance of probably 40 to 50 miles, maybe a little bit more than that with a peak kind of surge. Of course, you're going to have wave action outside of that area. The problem is when you have this timing problem that we have right now, we're sort of 12 hours out of cycle phase of what I'd like to be able to give the daylight leading time there, we have to warn a little bit early, and that means our warnings have to be a little broader.
All right, I know you have buoys out there offshore measuring the swells coming in. Are we seeing swells yet approaching the coast from the storm?
I don't think so. It's a relatively small storm, so that means you don't get these big swells like we had from Gabrielle and some of the others. So we're not going to have those until the storm starts to get a little stronger and a little closer.
What was I'm trying to think in my head here, the last storm that was a little storm like this that came ashore?
Well, we've had strong...
And Bob wasn't a big storm, obviously.
No, it was, Bob was a similar size to this particular hurricane, maybe slightly larger than this particular hurricane. Inez, 1966, some of those extreme storms that were there. Cleo was a very small storm that affected this area, but this is a little bit more than Cleo.
Okay. All right, well, that's a good gauge, and because we'll be looking back at those storms of the past, I'm sure. Bob, we'll be back with you again later on this evening. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay. All right, now, let's go over one more time.
We're looking at hurricanes off each coast. We have Lester here off Baja, California, and of course the one we're really concerned about, this is Andrew. Seems to be heading steadily for Florida at about 15 miles an hour. We haven't seen a whole lot of change in that during the day. Here are the latest particulars from the National Hurricane Center. This issued at 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, centered at 25.9 north, 70.4 west, and that is 650 miles now, just about due east of Miami. Top winds up to 100 miles an hour and moving steadily westward at 15 miles an hour. We haven't actually had a pressure just lately from a reconnaissance aircraft. We should have another one pretty soon. At that time, the pressure was 974 millibars, or that is 28.76 inches. Now, the best we can see is going to continue a path directly toward the west. We don't know exactly where it's going to hit precisely, but certainly we're concerned about the Bahamas, and we're concerned about the central part of Florida and the southern part, and even all the way across the peninsula, as this hurricane is likely to move on across, we do believe. This is the latest satellite picture, and you can see this well-defined eye moving steadily toward the west. We watched it get better organized all day, and now it is, as you can see, a pretty powerful hurricane. We have yet another picture, and this one will give you a bit broader view. There is the eye of the hurricane, and there you see the Bahamas, Eleuthera, Andros Island there, Eleuthera up here, and the Grand Bahama and Great Abaco. And here comes the hurricane headed in that general direction at a steady 15 miles per hour. As we take a little bit of a look to see what the wind field looks like, 85 miles or so is what the tropical storm force winds extend out, and the hurricane force winds extend out about 30 or 40 miles from the center. Now, we do have some watches and some warnings to talk to you about. The government of the Bahamas has issued hurricane warnings for Eleuthera, Andros Island up to Great Abaco, and on up to Grand Bahama. And a hurricane watch is now in effect from Titusville, Florida, through the Florida Keys or to dry Tortugas. It looks as if we've been getting hurricane force winds in the Bahamas sometime tomorrow and sometime by early Monday along the Florida coast. So all you people there want to prepare for a hurricane, and it could be a pretty powerful hurricane by the time it gets there. Already it's powerful enough, and it's been a long time since you folks in South Florida have experienced a direct hit with this kind of a hurricane.
Hurricane watch is now in effect in Florida. Good evening. With winds of 100 miles an hour, Hurricane Andrew is heading towards South Florida. Team coverage begins with Channel 4 meteorologist Brian Norcross. Brian.
Okay, Jerry, here are the latest coordinates on Hurricane Andrew. These coordinates as of 5 o'clock. Now, we're going to get coordinates at least every 3 hours, and as the storm comes closer to land, we'll get them more often than that. But as of 5 o'clock, it's 25.9 north, 70.4 west. Top winds 100 miles an hour, moving to the west at 15, and west brings it right to Miami. It's 615 miles due east of Miami. This particular latitude is essentially the same latitude that we are right here. So if the storm continues on this path, and it is heading right down the pike of due west at this point, we expect that the storm is going to be in our neighborhood here by early in the day Monday, and possibly very, very early in the day Monday. Now, the central pressure, we have two numbers here, because some people like it in millibars, other people like it in inches. 974 millibars, 28.76 inches. And the other thing to notice here is that this number, the 25.9 north, is the same latitude that we had at 2 o'clock, and also that we had at 11 o'clock this morning. Now, we do have watches and warnings in effect. First of all, hurricane warnings in effect for the northern Bahamas, including Nassau, Freeport, that's Great Abaco, that's Andros Island, and Eleuthera. And what a hurricane warning means is that hurricane conditions are likely within the next 24 hours. And here's where the hurricane watch is in effect, meaning hurricane conditions are possible. So we're standing by here for more information. We'll show you what systems are affecting this and why we think it will not veer far to the north, if it veers north at all. Have that for you in just a few minutes, and we'll check in with the Hurricane Center. Jose.
Okay, Brian, thank you. With Hurricane Andrew now posing a direct threat to South Florida, preparations, as you can imagine, are essential.
Or it may be an indication of something to come. The odds that the storm is going to have a due west course, though, for the next 2 days is unlikely. Some change is likely to occur. One possible scenario would be that the